On today's episode of Left Off the Map, we're catching up with Henry and a local celebrity, Lexi. Lexi's one of those wonderful people that you have in your hometown, Country Women's Association baker. She can bake anything and bake it to the level that your grandma used to bake. So all those great memories that you had of your grandma baking, she can bake those things. So to tie in with that, I'm gonna make my favorite grandma baked recipe, which is scones. I'm not gonna measure anything. I'm just gonna go by feel. I once asked my nan what the measurements were and the recipe was for this, and she said there isn't any, you just go by feel. So I will try and write a recipe for you, but just watch what I'm doing and try and create the same. Self-raising flour, then baking powder. So you get a nice amount of raise out of your scones. Mix all that together. A couple of good pinches of salt. Don't be afraid to put a decent amount of salt in. And then some butter, about 25 to 35 grams of butter, not that much. And this is, you've got to get your fingers in there. You want to spread the butter out amongst the flour until it sort of resembles breadcrumbs. So you've got a nice, even dispersion of butter into flour. So you're kind of just going to grab hold of the flour and squeeze it between your fingers and keep doing it until you've separated or moved all of that butter into that flour. Once we've done that, we're going to make a little well in the middle and add our egg and our milk. So you can see how the consistency and the colour has changed in there. It's gone slightly yellow and you've got that almost like a breadcrumb consistency to it, which is what we're after. It means that that butter has been dispersed nicely. It's been mixed evenly through that flour. All right, egg, one egg. Some milk. And then I'm going to bring that together with a knife. It's really important that you do it with a knife. So break your egg up first in the middle, in that well. And then you want to cut through the wet mixture. You don't want to overwork the flour. That gives you a nice light scone. Not a chewy scone. There's nothing wrong with a chewy scone. Just want a nice light scone. And you always want to have the batter be slightly wet at this stage. Once you get to there, add a little bit more flour. Turn it over. So turn your dough over. Add a little bit more flour to the other side once you've turned it over. A little bit of flour down on your working bench. And then turn your dough out onto your bench. So now bring this together really gently. So you're still going to have a wet dough, but it's got lots of flour on the outside, so it should be easy to work with. It should be nice and light and fluffy. You shouldn't have to overwork it and it will come together. So you can see how soft that is. Now start forming a little ball of dough. That. Push it down. And you've got a beautiful scone dough mixture, a little bit of flour on top. It's almost the complete opposite to a pasta dough, which you work over and over and over again until it becomes nice and shiny and elasticy. We don't want that. My nan used to use a glass as well. Get some flour on the rim of the glass. Hear that? You hear it? I don't know if we can hear it on my mic or not. We'll get closer. This one. That's the sound you want. Now, most people, when you're making scones, you're not really going to worry about this too much, but my grandmother, because this is her recipe, I take it very, very, very seriously. All right, bringing the rest of the dough together. So what I do when I bring it together is grab it and sort of fold and stretch it and fold it under like that. A little bit more flour on top. So again, I haven't over-kneaded it, haven't overworked it to create another workable piece of dough. All right, oven tray. Now, a lot of people do like an egg wash or a milk wash on top of their scones. I don't. Gives it that sort of glossy effect on top. I don't bother with that. I think if you've made a scone and you've made it well, you don't need to dress it up. So about a little bit under 1 centimetre between each one. Oven at about 180 to 190 degrees. In they go. And they'll take about 15 minutes to cook. The best way to tell whether they're cooked or not, get one out, turn it over and flick the bottom. If it sounds hollow, it's cooked all the way through. All right, I'm going to clean this mess up and then we'll come back in 15 minutes. So that is what they should look like in the end, and sort of uniform all the way around. You can see where they've run into the other scone, which would have pushed it up a little bit more. Break them open. Light and fluffy on the inside. Smell like a scone should smell. Beautiful, like butter and flour mixed together. These are my two favourite fillings, so jam and cream. Now, I can make a good scone because I was taught by my grandmother, someone else who makes a fantastic scone and has even done ads locally here in Tasmania for this flour company, Four Roses. So she's become a little bit of a local celebrity. So we're going to go catch up with Lexi, our local celebrity, and Henry Terry as they tour around Cradle Mountain. There are many ways to see the famous Cradle Mountain, but what would have to be the most unforgettable experience to see it is from the air.
G'day, you must be Stuart.
Yes, certainly am.
I'm Henry.
How you going, Henry? Good to meet you, Henry.
And I'm Lexi.
How you going, Lexi? Good
Very
to meet
well,
you too.
thank you. How are you?
Well, thank you.
So Stuart, what are we doing today?
Okay, so we're about to go on a 20-minute flight around Cradle Mountain.
Wowee. I'm so excited. Can't wait.
So am I.
So what can we expect getting in a helicopter? I mean, it must be totally different to a plane.
It is very different, yeah. So you're flying straight away. You don't have to race down the runway to take off.
Yeah.
And the view out through the big windows is spectacular.
Like it's pretty much all windows, isn't it? Can we get started?
Yes, we certainly can.
Awesome.
We'll get you on board.
Ripper.
Well, the surrounding area is amazing. I mean, like seeing it from above in a helicopter, I'd never been in a helicopter before. And to see it sort of, you're above it, but you're not too high. You can see all the details and all the ancient, ponds all through the area. It's incredible, the waterfalls, and it's like something from another world.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I thought it was going down and going up, and I thought, is he going to hit into those?
Yeah, going around the sides of the hills.
He goes round, he was very good, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Well, we have the Scottsdale tomahawk for the lady with the blueberry and apple puree.
My word, doesn't that look beautiful?
I really hope as it looks.
You've got some work to do there. That's it's a hell of a meal.
I'll explain this
I
in
might
one
have to
moment
have
for you,
some-
sir.
I might have to have some help, Henry.
I think, well, I'll be happy to help Lexi if
Would
needed.
you? Well, that would be good. Doesn't that look beautiful?
It smells even better.
I have some fresh roasted chat potatoes.
Thank
This is
you
the
very
hot rock
much.
for you.
Wow,
Careful, it's really very hot. It's not only called hot rock.
Oh my
You go,
God.
Henry.
And then over here, we have the beef fillet, we have the lamb rump, and underneath the very dark one is the wallaby fillet. With the wallaby, I would recommend not to overcook it. Everything further than medium rare can get a little bit chewy. So maybe 1.5 minutes on each side and you should be all good.
Okay, brilliant. Well,
Have
that's
we read it to you
fantastic. Well, we definitely will. Would you be able to sit down and talk us through how we do this? And I mean, to learn a bit about this produce
Let's
would
do
be
it.
great.
You after some wines as well, you two, with your dinner?
Would you like a wine?
Yes.
I think that'd be
I have
fantastic.
something prepared for you too.
Awesome, thank you. I'm Henry.
Henry, nice to meet you.
Great to meet you.
My
Yeah,
name's
this is
Ivo.
Lexi.
And I'm Lexi.
Lexi,
Yeah.
nice to meet you. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it is to you too.
Well,
So what's the best way to cook these meats?
I'll let you know about it. So
Okay.
first of all, it's a 390 degrees volcanic hot stone, so it gets heated to 390 degrees. It's really very hot, so you have
Okay.
to be careful with that.
Don't touch, don't
I personally would start with the lamb rump because it takes the longest, and then I would put on the fillet, and the very last one, the wallaby fillet.
Okay.
As I said, for the wallaby fillet, maximum 1.5 minutes on each side to have it medium rare, which is the perfect cooking temperature for Tassie wallaby.
Okay.
And the other two you can cook to your liking. I would recommend it in medium rare as well, which is approximately like 2 minutes on each side.
About 2 minutes on each side. Okay, so we just bang
Just
them on.
bang it
and
on
get
there,
into it.
exactly
All right,
right,
let's,
yes.
let's have a
And
go.
It starts sticking from the very start a little bit, but it automatically creates a bit of a crust, and whenever it's able to be turned around, it should be the right time to turn it around.
Okay, so these this particular dish, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a hot rock in person before. It's a very rare thing. I mean, is this a signature dish for...
It is one of
Cradle
our
Mountain.
most sold and our most sought after dish. And we came up with that. For us, it's our signature dish because we thought, how can we provide the most variety for people who come to Tasmania that they can try as most as possible on one dish only. And we have it on the menu since nearly 5 years now.
Okay, incredible.
All right, then I really hope you have a fantastic dinner, you too. Please enjoy everything. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to give me a hoy and I come over. And in the meantime, please have a lovely dinner and enjoy everything.
Thanks so much, Evo.
Have a great evening, you
Enjoy.
two. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks for inviting
Thank you.
me.
You're very welcome.
Lexi, cheers to a great day. Absolute ripper. What a great way to finish off. I think we should just dig in.
I do too, don't you? Look at
Yeah,
my lovely
absolutely.
piece of pork.
You've
Thank
got some
you.
work to do.
I would.
Well, I think that's an experience that Lexi and Henry will never forget. So to continue with the baking theme, to support Lexi and all the baking that she's done in the past, I'm going to do a bread and butter pudding, classic bread and butter pudding. I'm going to make single serve portions of them. Bread and butter pudding is something that a lot of people have probably had. Their grandmother probably made it, and they may not have tried making it because it is something that is traditional and probably isn't made by the younger generation. So I'm going to show you how you can get grandma's bread and butter pudding and make it today. Right, eggs. I'm probably only going to need 1 egg. I might end up using 2, but we'll see. So 1 egg. Some sugar. Probably need 1, 2, 3. Go 3.5 tablespoons of sugar. I'm going to correct this as we go along. A good pinch of salt. Some vanilla. Then I'm going to whisk all that together. So it's important that once you sort of put your egg and your sugar together, you whisk. Because the sugar will start cooking the egg and you might get it to curdle, which you don't want. Instead of like making a normal custard, you use egg yolk. We're using the whole egg in this, so that's probably the main difference to how we're going through this process. And normally you would add warm milk or warm cream to this, the sugar in the egg mix. We're going to add just normal cold cream. We're making like a wet custard or a cold custard mixture. Okay, so some spice Add as many or as little spices as you want. Cinnamon is the one I would recommend that you definitely add. Then you can add ginger. If you're someone who likes ginger, you can add nutmeg, you can add allspice, you can add clove. It's up to you. But I think cinnamon and vanilla are sort of the two absolute classics that you've got to have in there. And you can substitute brown sugar for white sugar if you want more of a caramelly flavoured bread and butter pudding. I'm going to go with another egg. So it'll end up being 2 eggs. Just because I want this to set. A little bit more sugar now. So another probably 1.5 tablespoons of sugar. We're going to add some blueberries later, which will give us some sweetness as well. All right, mix all that together. All right, so I ended up with 2 eggs in there, about 8 tablespoons of sugar, about 1/2 cup of milk, I reckon, about a teaspoon of vanilla, and about 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon. Now, the bread component of our custard. So get a little food processor. If you're making more, obviously get a bigger food processor. I'm only making a small amount, so a little food processor is going to do. Chop your bread. Just roughly, just so you can get it into the food processor. And most people will say brioche is the best way to go for bread and butter pudding. I think it makes it's too soft. Roughly chop, just so the food processor can handle it. So this is going to create the crust or the base of our bread and butter pudding. All right, pop that in as well. Now mix that custard mixture and the bread together. And you want to let the bread soak up all of that custard mixture. So you want to leave this for about 10 minutes. Now I want to add my blueberries. So 1/2 of the blueberries in here, about 125 grams of blueberries. Mix that through. All right, it's a good mixture of blueberries in there. So now it's a matter of putting it in your little individual portions. Now, if you're going to turn this out, you'd want to line it with some baking paper and some butter, but I'm not going to turn it out. I'm going to serve this in the individual little portion. And then when you sort of get to there, just get some of the custard and just make sure you've got a good coverage of custard everywhere. Remaining mixture. All right, so here comes the butter component. A few little knobs of butter on top of each. And it is a bread and butter pudding, so don't skimp on the butter component of the bread and butter pudding. Just finish with a little bit more sugar. So just a sprinkle of sugar on top, just to get some caramelisation on the top. It doesn't need to be a lot. Just enough that there's something there to caramelise when it's in the oven. Okay, pinch of salt on each one. And they can go into an oven set at 180. And they'll take about 35 minutes. You'll know when they're cooked if you push the top of the bread and butter pudding, you won't get any of the uncooked egg pushing up through the bottom. But I reckon 35 minutes and we'll have our bread and butter pudding. So it's been a real episode of baking with probably my two favourite things in the world to bake. Bread and butter pudding and scones, they're two things that my grandmother used to make a lot. It's food that is homely, it's food that we all grew up with, and it's food that hopefully generations will pass on and on and on, thanks to people like Lexi.